Step into the light or the shadow it casts. A look in the mirror, stripping the mask. The ego deflects what the id wants to hide, but we find the truth on the edge of the slide. The void isn't empty, it's a canvas of gray, where the ghosts of our bias come out to play. You point at the monster, you point at the screen, but it's only a shadow that's being seen. We sit in the silence where the tension is rife, dissecting the ego with a surgical knife. From the depths of the abyss to the clarity of mind, leaving the noise and the drama behind. High etiquette, held as the ultimate key. This is the Short Burst Podcast TV. See the mirror for what it is. The progression begins now.
Okay, greetings everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Want to make sure everybody...
Man up, slaves, and hit those buttons, or I'll send ice.
And that includes the PayPal link down below to help a brother out, share a little bit of love. All is appreciated. We're running short at the end of the month again here, of course, due to recent events. So if you have a little bit of love to share, please do so. In the meantime, we're going to get into this thing about, can evil be trained? The science of modern heroes. And you people have been listening to me for a while. You know I speak about Philip Zimbardo here and there. Philip Zimbardo is the guy that did the Stanford Prison Project. And then, of course, because of its disastrous results that he clearly didn't expect, he turned around and consequently came out with the Heroic Imagination Project. So we're going to look over a couple of short videos and some things going on with the political realm today, and how the oppression is clearly overriding justice and righteousness, and see if we can't see if evil is being trained and how we can come up with some modern heroes. So let's take a look at this first one. And this is a recent event. This is from CB3 New TV. Let me see here. Arizona's Family, 3 TV, CBS 5, from Phoenix Police. So let's take a look and see what's going on here. Down in Phoenix here recently.
Now, new details tonight about a tense and unusual scene at an East Valley High School student protest.
We now know an armed, masked man who showed up during an anti-ICE student walkout 3 months ago at Hamilton High is a Phoenix police sergeant.
No way. You don't say. Let's hear that again.
During an anti-ICE student walkout 3 months ago at Hamilton High is a Phoenix police sergeant. An armed, masked man who showed up during an anti-ICE student walkout 3 months ago at Hamilton High is a Phoenix police sergeant. Alexis.
So let's talk about that. Armed, masked, unidentified until recently. They find out it turns out to be a Phoenix police officer. Are these people being trained for the distractions and the separation, the divorce from the people, the divorce of authority from the people, the taking of authority from the people through intimidation tactics, threats, visual threats? That's what the hype is all about today.
Angus is here now. You got a hold of some new police records. What was he doing out there?
Yeah, He was trying to get kind of a reaction from the students, and this all started right here as a walkout outside of Hamilton High School.
This is what they say. He was trying to get a reaction from the students. Was he trying to get a specified reaction or just any kind of reaction for observance purposes? Are they holding open experiments themselves, trying to see how the younger generation is going to act to their presence as armed, gunned people?
Similar to many others we saw across the valley after federal agents in Minneapolis shot and killed Alex Preddy back in January. But this one quickly escalated. And the man at the center of it all, according to police, was an armed off-duty Phoenix police sergeant.
Inserting himself into a protest in the way in which he did had the potential to go very badly.
And they know this. This is one of their tactics, to insert themselves into situations like this to get that violent reaction. And this is what they're doing to your students, your children. These aren't adults. These are high school students wanting to become adults and be the very heroes that they were brought up to be. I think a lot of people are tired of being bullied. Considering bullying starts in the school, and then the people that are supposed to be protecting these people are the ones doing it.
And in fact, that was his intent.
Mike Giannacco, an expert on police oversight and accountability, says this moment raises serious concerns.
He was a supervisor, so one would expect him to know better.
Chopper video shows hundreds of...
This moment, I'm surprised people aren't aware of all the other moments that have been going on repetitively for decades. This has been going on for decades, folks.
Students chanting and walking out of Hamilton High School in Chandler back in late January, part of a wave of protests across the valley over immigration enforcement. According to this police report, officers were already monitoring it when a student flagged down officers, reporting a suspicious man with a gun. Officers say they spotted him near a shopping center wearing a mask and openly carrying a handgun with extra magazines. Moments later, that man, identified as off-duty Phoenix Police Sergeant Dustin Mullen, approached students, telling them to grow up.
Telling them to grow up. Grow up how? Grow up by not using the First Amendment and peacefully protesting? Telling them to grow up and not assert their rights? Using intimidation tactics to do so? Come on, people. When are you going to wake up and see this? This is trained evil.
I'd argue that his intent was essentially an incitement to a riot, which is a criminal offense, by the way.
But police reports we obtained...
Absolutely. It's called insurrection. It's called insurrection when you incite violence in a peaceful protest of people asserting their First Amendment. That is insurrection.
Reveal even more, alleging Mullen refused to leave and even told officers he had called other armed individuals to come to the scene.
Because others may have been involved and contacted and agreed to create a situation, that's essentially conspiracy.
At one point,
yeah, they call it conspiracy. I'm saying it's insurrection. You can downplay it all you want, but this is an egregious act against the nation.
According to the report, Mullen told officers his plan was to let students assault him so they could be arrested.
Let students assault him. Right. That's why you got your gun and you're so brave. You're going to walk into this crowd and let the students assault you when you won't let anyone assault you in your job, but you're going to take the time out of your day on your free time off the clock and let them assault you. Come the fuck on. When are you people going to see the insanity in this bullshit?
Moments later, that's exactly what happened. A teenage girl threw water at Mullen and was arrested for assault and disorderly conduct.
Assault and disorderly conduct. So he was kind of successful in his endeavor to incite some kind of assault. See, that's called antagonizing. And he did it on purpose to ruin some little girl's life.
But ultimately, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office declined to file those charges.
To try to orchestrate a conflict with juveniles, in my view, is beyond the pale.
Now, Mullen's attorney says he is cooperating with that internal investigation. Meanwhile, a Phoenix police spokesperson confirms Mullen remains employed while their Professional Standards Bureau looks into exactly what happened. But
Of course, they're going to keep him employed. It's obvious what's going on, but they're going to keep him employed because they're going to find some kind of excuse to keep him employed. They're investigating themselves. Don't you see it? When are you people going to stand up and hold them accountable?
there are still many questions about what happened and what kind of policies, if any, were violated. So we will keep you updated. We'll continue following this case.
I don't give a fuck about their policies. It's clear they violated the law. They violated the Constitution. It's clear it's known as insurrection. He should be in jail. I don't give a fuck what kind of power you think you got. This man should clearly be in jail. If I'd have done that, I'd be in jail. What is the difference between myself and the police officer? Are they special? No. Then why are they being treated special?
An investigation will bring you any updates as we learn more. Reporting live here in the studio, Alexis Dominguez for Arizona.
And the next one I got, real quick here, want to remind everybody.
Chief of Police said the subject is the one who.
Want to remind everybody, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There's a PayPal link down there for anybody who wants to share some love. We are going through some rough times here due to recent events. Trying to get the StreamYard up for Heckle Bus Rides, the Short Bus Podcast TV, to do full debate panels. So if you've got something you can share, please help out. We always appreciate everything. This one here is Cop Talk Live, and we've listened to a couple of his before. He makes great sense. So let's listen to him, what he's got to say on this.
The chief of police said the subject is the one who dictates the use of force that's used.
The subject is the one who dictates the force that's used. So when that officer went into that crowd and he was armed and masked, he is the one that was dictating the force to be used. Do you understand that? While on their side, on his side, he was using that same premise to play against the woman that threw water on him. Okay?
Well, what happens when you're losing the fight, when you're out of shape, when you're weak, you don't know what you're doing? Pay attention. This is how you get around all that bullshit and still blame the subject. I'm fat. I eat McDonald's 5 days a week. I don't go to the gym. My blood pressure is 220/60. I'm a walking heart attack.
And that's what I'm curious. I don't know the presence of the officer in the previous video, but I'd like to see what kind of officer he was. Is he one of the guys that's muscle bound and pushes that physical authority, and he's going to use that as a premise of his heroic actions in situations where a little girl throws water on him? You know, what is it? Was he fat, slovenly, and trying to trigger people because he couldn't get the right arrests out on the job? So he's going to go to a bunch of minors and try to trigger them because he's obese and can't chasten? Come on.
I am gasping for air, losing the fight. I'm going to go to my pistol and shoot and kill this person. No. No, that's not what happened. The subject was still actively resisting you. They chose what level of force that you were going to use on them by continuing to fight. Whoever wrote use of force policies are the most brilliant people in the world, because they can never hold cops accountable. You've seen the fat ones out there who, they take 2 steps and their legs are going to break at the ankles. They're going to have a heart attack.
And you can't say that you haven't seen these people. You take a look at your local police force, people. Take a look at those people, and you tell me if you think that fat 5'6" woman can really take care of you. Can she protect you? Because that's what we're looking at. And again, you can call me misogynist all you want, but I sincerely do not believe that police need women on their force. Just like the military. We don't need women in the military. And that's what the military is for, is to protect women and children. And yet you're going to institute women into that military, into your police force to protect others. That's not their position. That's not their capacity in this natural society. And I think it's bullshit. So again, call me misogynist all you want. Women shouldn't be on the force for first thing. Second of all, police, just like the military, have to have some kind of physique to be able to carry out that hard, intensive physical labor of chasing down suspects, of wrestling down bigger people. Imagine a 5'2", 165-pound woman being a police officer. You think she's going to protect you? Same thing with that fat fucking slob of a male with a belly that overhangs. He can't even see his feet. Come on.
They go to their pistol, and the way that the use of force policies are written, you still blame the subject. You don't blame the fact that the cop didn't take care of themselves. Officer, did you train? No. Officer, how often do you go to the range? On qualification days. Officer, how often are you in the gym? I'm not. Officer, what's your diet like? It's a moot point, Your Honor. What is the relevancy of the officer's diet? Well, we want to know what their blood pressure is. We want to know what their health and wellness is. We want to know what their resting heart rate is 150 beats per minute. They're going to die at any minute. Doesn't matter. The subject is the one who dictates the use of force. Does it make sense why I keep saying the worst quality cop you put on the street, it doesn't fucking matter, because they're still going to be covered by objectively reasonableness.
And that's why it's important for yourself to keep healthy. You don't want to fall into that same track. You don't want to fall into the dependence of having somebody else protect you. Particularly if you've got your door open, the lights off, and you're out in the front yard collecting night crawlers for bait, and they want to come up and start asking you questions about whether you live there or not, because they have some deep concern about somebody that lives with their door wide open and the lights off, not depending upon their safety and the regular routine of keeping your doors closed and your lights on so you can see. You can't live in your natural element. You got to live the way the rest of society tells you to live. And that's lock your doors and keep your lights on and peek out the window and keep an eye on your neighbors. When the fuck are you going to get out of this routine? Let's take a look at the next one. Another quick short here. Pay attention to what the sheriff says.
We intentionally ran him over.
I'm not condoning what the guy in Porterville did, killing that cop.
We intentionally ran him over.
I'm not condoning what the guy in Porterville did,
We intentionally ran him over.
I'm not condoning what the guy in Porterville did, killing that cop. But do you guys agree with this, Sheriff?
We intentionally ran him over. What agency? Kern County Sheriff's Office. Don't shoot at cops. You shoot at cops, we're going to run you over.
You shoot at cops, we're going to run you over. No, that's not the regular routine. Okay? So you understand this Preddy thing and this, the other Gale, good. When stepped in front of the car. This is all shit that they're putting out there that is just fucking total insanity. When are you going to understand that this is trained evil? Literally being trained to do this shit. I don't know what you guys think about Jim Carrey, but Jim Carrey spoke on some of this shit. So we're going to take a look at a quick video from him.
Kidnapping children is not what great nations do.
Is that a gang sign that you,
Oh, like you don't know what it is. And I'm sick of it. I want everybody to be in on the joke, man. You know what I mean? But for years now, talk show hosts, people on television, people in sitcoms have been hired by the government to throw you off the track, to distract you, to make you laugh, and stuff like that, make you happy and docile, so you don't know what's really going on. You know, they get out there in the woods in a circle naked and they decide these things. And, you know what they're trying to do? Ooh, this thing is buzzing. Hold on. They're trying to turn us into, consumer drones.
Bitch ass slaves. They're turning you into bitch ass slaves. Just like he said, consumer drones. When are you going to come out of that? Okay. So now we're going to take a look at a video on a new ruling that the courts put out recently. And I urge you people to really pay attention here because it goes to the insanity. It goes to your mentality and the way these police act, believing that everybody else are the insane ones. It's everybody else that's out of their mind. And for their community care and concern, they have ultimate authority to do anything they want. And these rulings in these courts are doing nothing but fomenting it even further. See, it's the courts that are signing on for this shit. When the officers do this evil training and then decide to off people, the courts and the prosecutors are the ones that are supporting this. They're the ones that are allowing this kind of shit to happen through the court systems. And it's you, the people, that are standing back and letting it as well. When are you going to stand up? Okay. Appreciate you, Scott. Scott says, good afternoon, Keith. Hope you're having a great day. Thank you for the content you put out. I can only hope the content catches people's ears because I think that's what's missing. People are not paying attention to the real mechanics of what's happening, of the trained evil turning you into bitch-ass slaves and using some kind of mentality issue against you as if though you're the ones that are insane. Wake up. Quit being so complacent. Understand that your future and your children's future and your children's children's futures are at stake. So let's take a look at this video. And this is from, as soon as it stops looping.
Imagine you're at home.
This is from Hampton Law. Hampton Law. And it's the new ruling cops use to search your home without a warrant. You ain't coming in my home without a warrant. No, 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 no. No, 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 you're not. It'll be my dead body. My home is my temple. So let's take a look at this. And be sure to make any comments you want in chat. Feel free to discuss it amongst each other. I can drop the link down for anybody that wants to join the panel. Just let me know. But I was just planning on doing some reviews here. I've got 2 more videos from Phillips and Bardo after this, talking about the heroic mechanization of our youth. So we're going to watch this and then 2 more videos from Phillips and Bardo.
Minding your own business when suddenly you hear police, welfare check, open up. You have no idea what's going on, but you've watched my videos before and you know you have a constitutional right to remain within the privacy of your own castle. so you choose not to answer the door. The cops, they keep knocking and they say they are coming in. I'm Jeff Hampton, the People's Lawyer. And in this video, I'm covering the new Supreme Court case that changed the Fourth Amendment and made it easier for cops to get into your home without probable cause. Stick around to the end because I'm going to show you how cops use this new welfare check to get into your home without probable cause and what you can do to limit cops from getting into your home. The Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution.
And what I want to mention here real quick here, if you go back through my videos, you'll see I did a video the other night where I was literally out looking for crawlers so I could go do some fishing. And when I got done looking for crawlers, I came back inside the house. And the time between me being outside looking for crawlers and coming in the house, I know that somebody had to have seen me outside getting crawlers. Because I wasn't halfway down this hallway in the back here, heading back to see my companion and talk to her real quick, when somebody was on my handicap ramp out front, hollering into the house. So they were there and they saw exactly who was doing what. And just because I live freely of my own free will and I don't live in fear and I don't lock my doors all the time. In fact, I will leave my door wide open all day long if I want to, letting the house air out and get that fresh breeze. And at night, I will leave it open with my lights off. I often go in and out just to check the weather and things like that. And in this time of need, our dog had just passed away. Got hit by a car and passed on. So we're in a mental, emotional stress already. And this is the kind of event that they will try to use against you because you seem emotionally unstable. No, they don't understand emotions. They don't understand that when people grieve, they show those emotions. And so anytime somebody seems to be mentally unstable according to their discernment, which could merely be a child crying, uh-oh, did that man do something to that child? That child is crying, and I don't see any reason for that child to be crying. Children cry for no fucking reason, and yet they will use that as an excuse. Understand what's going on, folks.
Constitution is supposed to protect each and every one of us from unreasonable searches and seizures. In fact, the Fourth Amendment specifically states it is the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects, and it shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, we all know that over the years,
and what they're doing is they're not using Article 3 for that Fourth Amendment. They're using Article 1, administrative courts, and saying that because you're part of that administration, because you carry that state ID, because you're a bitch-ass slave to the state, you are part of that administration. Therefore, they don't need to use the Fourth Amendment qualifications to have a grand jury present to hand down a warrant. They're using an administrative process. Discogs has stood up and was cut down. Ouch. Yeah, a lot of times you can stand up and they're going to try to cut you down. But we're not plants. We've got feet, legs, arms, and we can get right back up. And that's what it's about. Don't give up. Don't believe that they have authority, because they don't.
that cops and the Supreme Court have found ways to erode that right of privacy and protection. But your home, it's supposed to be different. Traditionally, up until now, the system's supposed to work like this. Police suspect something. They write it down. They go to a judge. A judge says yes or no. Then they're able to enter with a valid warrant. The judge is the circuit breaker. They are the ones that help determine, is there sufficient probable cause here to warrant an officer invading your privacy and your home? But there's always been one
can hope, yes. Discog says one can hope for cumulative effect. But the only way we have a cumulative effect is more and more of us stand up and start doing this. Start taking care of business on our own and letting them know they don't have any authority and we don't have any trust or respect for them. Because they don't. It's the people that have authority, period.
Lever that the government can pull. They can try to claim there's an emergency. Because after all, if someone's bleeding out, no one wants a paperwork first constitution. And therein lies the problem with this new Supreme Court case that was just issued in January 2026 that defines that emergency exception continues to expand so that now cops don't even really need probable cause to get into your home. So here's the setup and exactly what happened with William Case. A woman calls 911 about her ex, William Case, in Montana. She tells dispatch he's threatening suicide and might have shot himself. Police show up. They knock on the door. They yell into an open window with no response. Then they look through windows and see a few details that, well, depending on your life, could be normal or could be spun into a crisis. Empty beer can.
Or could be spun into a crisis. No, it doesn't even have to be spun into a crisis in situations like this where somebody else calls in a community care concern, particularly ex-wives. They're an ex-wife for a reason. The man obviously didn't want her in his life. Why? Because she was causing problems? And now she's going to call the police and say he's the problem. He's threatening suicide. That's hearsay. And when police act on hearsay with no evidence whatsoever, that is so far out from the bounds of reality, it's pathetic. Because that is a common call today. Just call in and say, hey, somebody's threatening suicide. If you really cared and really had a concern, you should have been showing it a long time ago, not waiting until after you get a divorce.
An empty handgun holster and a notepad they wanted to interpret as being a suicide note. Now watch this. Here is the phrase that should change the way you see the term emergency aid or welfare check. Police claim.
Bingo. See, what he's doing is showing you the distinction of the words that they change around. Emergency aid versus welfare check. They are two different things. And when they go on a welfare check and all of a sudden decide that it needs emergency aid because they created some kind of discernment in their own mind that there was an emergency, when there's absolutely no sign of emergency, it should show you the delusion, the extent that they think their authority operates at in every realm, that they are above the law and can do anything they want.
There was an emergency here, but they didn't kick in the door immediately. They called their chief. They conferred with him. They worried that entry might spark a confrontation, even though they think he might have already shot himself. So what did they do? They geared up. Ballistic shields, long barrel guns. They were ready to force their way in. But get this.
Yeah. Somebody's threatening to kill themselves. So all of a sudden they're a danger to everybody else. Why would they be a danger to everybody else? Let me ask you, folks, if somebody's standing on a bridge and threatening to jump off, are they going to come all armored up? Do they come all armored up and prepared to shoot the guy? No. So what's the difference here?
Even though they claimed there was an emergency that they absolutely had to look into, they waited a total of 40 minutes from the time they first arrived before they ever made their way into the door.
Now that's what I call an emergency. They had a response time that was excellent. But then once they got there, it took 40 minutes to declare an emergency.
So the first lesson I learned that came out of this case is that when cops claim there's an emergency, even if it takes them 40 minutes, it's not really that seconds count. It's all about the story they come up with after the fact. If the
bingo, it's all about the story they come up with after the fact. Like the video earlier where the young gal threw water on an officer that was masked and gunned at a high school gathering.
The police can explain some believable emergency story that justifies coming into your home, then the need for a warrant was unnecessary because they were just doing their job. But back to the facts of the case. Inside the house, Case is in a bedroom closet. He throws open the closet curtain, holding something that looks like a gun. An officer shoots and injures him. A handgun is found nearby. And Case ends up being convicted of assaulting a public servant. So imagine the cops entered the house claiming they were there for an emergency rescue, but it only ended in a prosecution. So what did the Supreme Court actually decide here?
Imagine that. And we have no evidence yet that the guy was actually interested or had any thoughts of suicide. Remember, that came from an outside source. So the police still have no gathering of information whatsoever. And all it is it looks like a gun. For crying out loud, they try to play that a phone looks like a gun with these First Amendment officers. So think about this, folks.
They said police can enter your home without a warrant to render emergency aid if they have, quote, an objectively reasonable basis for believing someone inside is seriously injured or facing imminent serious harm. Sounds
reasonable, doesn't it? But again, in this situation, they had none of that. They had a caller that came in and gave hearsay testimony that he was threatening suicide.
Responsible, right? But here's the critical part. The court said that it does not require the cops to have probable cause. And the Supreme Court didn't say it casually. They literally changed the standard from probable cause to an objective, reasonable belief. What is
objective, reasonable belief? So what is objective, reasonable belief? When you don't have details to discern the belief. When the details are, it looked like a gun. Is that objective? It looked like a gun? I don't think so. Because if you put that to other people and they say, well, no, it looked like a broom to me, then it's obviously not objective. So where does this objective standard come from?
What does that mean? Exactly. And the problem is the Supreme Court didn't really define it either. When Mr. Case challenged the Supreme Court on this claim of the standard, the Supreme Court basically responded that the standard means exactly what we say it meant, and we don't need any further explanation. This is critical, and it's very important. And I have to ask you, when it comes to the Fourth Amendment, is the interpretation of this going to mean the Fourth Amendment is essentially dead? Because the Supreme Court now says no probable cause is required. That line by the Supreme Court is a bomb. Because the requirement of probable cause is in the Fourth Amendment, specifically requiring probable cause. And now it essentially removes all of the essential questions a cop must answer in order to lawfully get into your home. You say, come on, Jeff, is it really that big of a difference? Well, the finding of probable cause forces police officers to answer reliability questions. They have to answer questions like, who said what? How do they know?
Said what? My very first comment about it was a hearsay representation of somebody else supposedly wanting to commit suicide. Who said it? Do they know the extent of the circumstances? Do they know that it was an ex-wife that was recently divorced and going through a tumultuous divorce and was trying to be aggressive towards her husband in a passive way by getting the police over there to excite him, just like they did in that little protest with the high school students? Did she call the police so that they would go over there and antagonize him and help her in her court case in the divorce by presenting that he was the demon?
and what was actually verified. But this new standard of objectively reasonable basis,
Greetings,
what
Russ.
does that mean? That is now squishy. It's messy. We have no idea what it means, particularly in a situation where some neighbor called 911 or some ex of yours doesn't like what you do or say, so they call the cops claiming you're unstable or emotional. Think about it. Anybody can call in for a welfare check. Anybody can claim, oh, I think he was strange. He might be suicidal. Or, oh, I think he has mental health issues.
And that's the foundation. When are you going to be so concerned about your neighbor that you're going to stop doing that kind of insane call-in, passive-aggressive action through the police? When are you going to stop calling the police for your insane bullshit?
Which brings us to the real change according to this new Supreme Court case. Under the old Fourth Amendment constitutional standard, judge before entry equals front-end accountability. It stopped cops from just making up things as they go, and they had to see a judge before they got into your front door. Under the new model, the judge only has to be referenced after entry, and the cops receive back-end forgiveness. And by the time a judge has reviewed it later, your privacy's already gone. Your home has already been searched and
Your home has already been searched and destroyed in those searches. Think about this stuff. And this is the most egregious lack of accountability and most aggressive assertion of authority that you could have. Blatant. We can do what we want, and there's nothing you can do about it because somebody else was the cause. We're just doing our job. Ask the judge. You know, the guy that signed on for us. How many times am I going to have to tell you people that's what's happening?
completely tossed, and your life has already been permanently altered. You can't unring a doorbell, and you can't undo the damage once the cops make it into your house. So now that we understand what the Supreme Court ruled, we have to understand why this new standard gets dangerous very fast. The Supreme Court tried to frame this as non-criminal or non-investigatory. It's just nothing but a wellness check. But in the real world,
non-investigatory, but yet based on a welfare call, now it becomes a crime, and it was committed against the police because the police have no accountability. They're not culpable for anything because the judge said so. When are you people going to learn?
once cops are in your house, two things happen. Number one, anything cops see in plain view turns their so-called "I'm just here to help" into evidence against you and you being arrested. Under the plain view doctrine, once cops force their way into your house, they can use anything they see, anything that might look suspicious, as a reason to escalate the encounter. Once they escalate the encounter, they'll secure the scene, use it as a reason to completely toss your house, and build a case based on anything they find. And then the next thing that happens, number two, is that the story the cops tell in the police report begins to drift.
No way. No way. You can't tell these people are lying. It sticks straight to the truth right from the beginning. It never drifts, right? Why would their story start to drift? Because they're not telling the truth to begin with. They based everything off of a lie and a call to them to begin with, and they think it's true, and they're going to make it true in the eyes of the law, and you're convicted.
It always starts with, "We're only entering to help." But it quickly turned into, "We saw X, we feared Y, we detained Z. We then had further probable cause, and we searched and found more." This is not paranoia. This is exactly how cops are trained to behave when
trained to behave. This is trained evil, folks. Pure, straight, trained evil.
and they get into your home. Now, if that's not bad enough, this is where this court decision gets very ominous for millions of people. Justice Sotomayor wrote an opinion, a concurrent.
What a bitch. What a bitch.
Opinion here that basically reads like, hey, listen, everyone should be very careful because in situations like this, especially when there's a gun, things can spiral out of control. She then
situations like this, especially when there's a gun, things can spiral out of control. Well, that's what they're trained to do. They're trained to escalate things so it spirals out of control. Jesus, when are you people going to wake up?
Points out something very concerning to me. She says that the risk of escalation is heightened even more because of how common it is for Americans to have guns in their household. And
so now the escalation has been put on the Americans who own guns, not the police and their use of their weapons and masks on their off time, inciting riots, inciting violence. It's not them. It's the good, honest American at home with his gun to protect himself. That's where the escalation occurs, right? You know, with the gun that's locked up in the gun safe. That's the escalation. Come on.
Because of this, police may need to use more forceful tactics when they realize that that homeowner could be armed. So think about what Justice Sotomayor just said.
Wait a minute. When they realized that homeowner could be armed. In America, we have the Second Amendment. They should assume every one of us is armed. Why is it they're assuming that we're not?
And how that applies to this objective reasonableness standard that the Supreme Court now has created. Imagine if your neighbor who doesn't like you calls over to the cops and says, you know what? I've been talking to old Billy next door, and he sure is depressed. And he's a gun collector. I'll tell you right now, watch out. He's got guns in the house. Who knows what he will do? Even if that gun is legal, even if it's locked up, even if the gun has nothing to do with anything. Now, in the eyes of the cops, because of this court opinion and this new standard, it can become a risk multiplier in the eyes of the cops, which could now justify them using a harder approach with you than someone who chose not to own a gun. Now, I have a problem with this because your constitutional protections should not shrink just because you own something you have a legal right to own. But under this new standard, that's the situation that gun owners may now face if the cops learn, oh, you're a bit unstable, or oh, we're going to do a welfare check, and I think this guy may have a gun. But what if?
So let me ask the premise of a welfare check where the guy doesn't own a gun. And that officer is standing outside the window, and he sees him pull something out of the closet, and it looks like a gun. What about those situations? Huh? What about those of us that don't own those types of weapons? What happens then? Well, we thought it was a gun. That's not objectively reasonable because it turned out to be a goddamn broom. Right? So subjective delusion is the course of the day here, folks.
If you don't own a gun, what if cops just want to come by and do a quick welfare check? Well, now what we've learned is that welfare checks aren't what they used to be. If you never had a cop knock on your door claiming a welfare check, you might believe it's going to be a soft, casual conversation where he'll check in and he'll walk away. But under this new standard, not necessarily so, because this new precedent under this new standard establishes where, just like Mr. Case had to go through, cops can now show up doing quote unquote a welfare check, and this could easily turn into long guns. But
so here's why I want to explain a little firsthand experience myself. Loss of my son 30-some years ago. And we buried my son on my birthday. And after we got home, mother, in her psychotic rage and fit and depression, started taking everything out of the closet, throwing it at me and telling me to get out of my own house. Now she had an open bladed knife in her pocket, threatening suicide herself. And so I called the neighbors down to help with the situation because I had to wrestle her down to the ground. And I couldn't get the knife out of her hand. And so when the police came, instead of seeing it for what it was, they arrested both of us and threw us both in jail. So when there's a welfare check in a situation like that, why is it that the police feel a need to do anything but a welfare check? See, I tell you these things for a reason, folks, because I've got firsthand experience. I've got plenty of firsthand experience. I know exactly what goes on, how it works. And it doesn't work for the people. It's because the people don't stand up. And like I said, I've got firsthand experience of how it works. And when I stood up, it started working for me. Of course, you have to stand up with respect and decency, information, knowledge, wisdom of that past experience, reflections, seeing them for what they are, and not the creation of some delusional storyline so you don't have to hold accountability. See, that's what this is. It's literally trained evil. Literally.
Ballistic shields and an armed entry. Oh, and Justice Sotomayor, she added another warning label. People with serious mental health conditions are disproportionately harmed in police interactions. So we're
disproportionately harmed in police interactions. So again, I ask, when they called a welfare check, which is a mental issue, then why didn't they bring a mental expert to make a good discernment in his professional, objective opinions? Why is it that we have to bring the police? See, in this case, there was no gun. It was just an open-bladed knife, and she was threatening suicide and being violent towards me. And it wasn't because that's the normal of the day. It's because we had been through a recent loss that caused her to go over the edge. And when people don't understand this and don't use this for their own discernment, you can see the lack of care that they actually have, because they don't give one fucking rat's ass about you. They care about their paycheck and going home at the end of the day to their wife and children.
If we're going to be brutally honest, we have a collision of realities that are now put in motion by this Supreme Court decision. Number one, mental health crises are unpredictable. Number two, police are trained for control and threat response. Number three, the home is a confined emotional space. And finally, number four, now the entry standard to get into that home is easier than ever to satisfy. You put all those realities together, that's how tragedies happen in living rooms. So this brings us to the ultimate question. Are there any limits to this new standard to stop cops from getting into your front door? Well, when you actually read the opinion, the court just repeats their standard line. An emergency aid entry doesn't authorize a full rummage through your home. But here,
emergency aid entry doesn't authorize a full rummage of your home. Yet that is consistently what they will do, despite any language, because every judge out there will sign off on it. They need to make a paycheck too.
here's what really matters. The protection of your home under the Fourth Amendment was never just about whether cops can get in and perform a search. It is also about whether the government is required under the Constitution to stop at the threshold of your home's front door to go to a judge and get a signed warrant with probable cause supported by facts and affidavit before they can force their way into your house. In Case versus Montana makes that requirement to talk to a judge ahead of time completely optional. So if a cop ever walks up, tries to claim they're performing a welfare check on you, here's some steps you can take to try to protect yourself and limit their ability to get into your home. Number one, tell your people what to do if you choose to go quiet. Why do I say this? Because a lot of these police encounters for welfare checks start when someone who cares doesn't know what's going on. I know this should seem like common sense, but if you go dark on someone, tell them to, number one, try to call you first. Number two, call someone else that you both know. Second,
I just dropped the link to that case down in the chat for anybody who wants to check it out. It's Case versus Montana. Just look it up. Otherwise, I've got the link down there. Case versus Montana, U.S. Supreme Court case.
to reach out. And number 3, call a crisis resource center anywhere else, because if you call the cops, I'm going to tell you right now, that should only be in a situation they know presents immediate danger to you, and not a, I don't know what's going on, so I'm going to call the cops. Number 2, if you own a gun in your home and people know you own a gun, get ready for unexpected police presence if they show up at your door. Assume anytime there's a welfare check, it's about to get much heavier than you thought it would be.
Yes, don't ever assume that a welfare check is just going to end as a welfare check. Never assume that, because that never happened. So there should be no assumption, presumption, or any inkling that that is what's going to happen. A welfare check is an arrest.
You have a gun and the cops have a gun outside your door, understand there's nothing really holding them back now from forcing their way in if they come up with a reasonable belief, an objective reasonable belief, whatever that means. So the goal.
Yeah, objective reasonable belief. Like you said, whatever that means. There is no such thing as an objective reasonable belief. Okay? If it's objective, then it's a reality, not a belief. Do you understand the babble these motherfuckers are putting out?
Goal is de-escalation.
You either know it objectively, and it is known objectively across the board by everyone, or it is a belief. It cannot be both.
Not winning the argument. But what if the police are at your door and they refuse to leave? Number 1, start by communicating.
Attaboy says English isn't a language. It is, in fact, a language model. What's your Legion of Merit in your lunar model? Actually, English is what's known as a vehicular language. In other words, it's meant to bring two cultures together with a singular language. So it's, yeah, it is a language model known as a vehicular language.
With the cops before you open the door. You have no requirement to open that door if you can provide some communication to the police to show them you are not a harm to yourself or others. Choosing.
And what I want to make a note on here is, you know, the other day when they came to my door, like I said, I ain't living in fear. Okay? I do not live in fear. I don't give a fuck who you are. But even in that case, they just came up on the handicap ramp. They didn't come in that door. They better not come in my door. Like I said, I don't live in fear. I'll do everything it takes. Because I don't give a fuck if you got that badge. To me, that badge is false authority. To me, that badge is a blatant advertisement that you're the crook, that you're the criminal, that you're here to fucking violate me and my wife. That's the evidence it shows me. And that's the way I act with it. So don't come up here placating that you're just an officer of the law and you just want to check things out. I'm on you already. No, you're not. You're not here by my consent. You're here because somebody else sent you or some kind of delusional belief you have. Get the fuck on. I don't appreciate your fucking insanity. Excuse my language, folks.
To remain silent actually.
This is certainly not a show made for kids. However, I urge you to educate your kids on what's happening. Oh, come on. Okay, let's see. Refresh. See what that does.
Imagine you're at home, minding your own business, when suddenly you hear police, welfare check. Before you open the door, you have no requirement to open that door if you can provide some communication to the police to show them you are not a harm to yourself or others. Choosing to remain silent actually feeds the emergency narrative. So I normally tell people you always have a right to remain silent. But when cops pull this situation where they show up claiming, oh, there's an emergency and we need to get inside, the longer you're silent, like Mr. Case was, the more they can justify barging into your home. If you're.
Yes, proper communication is, in fact, the best etiquette. Let them know. I don't care who called you. I'm not suicidal. That was a false call. You should go arrest them for false calls, false reporting. Okay? You don't call the police and make false accusations against somebody else and then expect to get away with it. You shouldn't. It happens way too often. That's why I'm doing this shit, to point it out. You need to wake the fuck up.
Safe, and you don't need the cops there. You can speak through the door. You can even pull back a window and you can talk to that officer directly, but it does not require you to have to open the door in order to show them that you are not a threat to yourself. In fact,
the other night when they were here, like I said, the lights were off, the door was wide open, and I went out on the handicap ramp to talk to him. And when I headed out the door, he headed down the ramp towards the street, and I had to go all the way out to the street to talk to him. Then when I walked back up the ramp to get my companion, because they wanted to verify my identification, he wanted to know if he could go in the house. No, you're not going in the house. I'll get my companion to come up to the door. You stay right where you're fucking at. I don't allow Hitler's willing executioners in my house. Don't happen.
you can say specifically, quote, "It's okay. I do not consent to entry. Do you have a warrant?" Number 2, ask them specifically what they need to hear from you so that they can close the call. You say, "Officer, what can I do for you to document this situation that I'm safe and that you can be free to leave?" And by the way, that leads me to number 3. This is why you've got to record everything.
Record everything. And this is one of the things people said they wished I'd recorded the call, but sometimes you're just not prepared for it. So I didn't have a video, but I did do a video right after they came. So if you have the mind, on a supposed attempt suicide or wanting to commit suicide call, I don't see any need to prepare for video. But if you are prepared with the video, that would kind of lessen the idea that you're wanting to commit suicide. So he's absolutely right in recording everything, using your proper communication skills to actually communicate with these people and not avoid them, not ignore them. Let them know what's on your mind.
Record the entire encounter and make it crystal clear that you are not consenting for them to come into the home, but that you did interact with them and show that you are not a danger to yourself or anyone else. And finally, number 4, offer a low-risk verification process to get the cops off your front porch. Step into view so that the cops can see you.
Step into view so the cops can see you. And the entire time they were here, I didn't turn the lights on once, except for when my companion had to come to the door to identify me. Then they went back off again. I don't have to give them comfort and convenience of having a light so they can see me properly.
Talk to dispatch on the call. Make it clear to them exactly that you are fine and there is no issue going on. And only if absolutely necessary do you go outside to speak to the officers in order for them to understand that there's nothing going on. But by all means, don't take a weapon with you and do not give them consent to enter into your home. Because remember, they came only as a welfare check to make sure you're okay. The moment you stepped outside and shut that door, they have no basis to come into your home. But
that's the thing about their stop the other night. Don't know who called them. Don't think anybody called them. I think one of them was just cruising the area, saw the door wide open, and thought he'd make a fucking investigation of his own. Because here in America, you can't live under your own free will and have your doors open and the lights off. Because you're supposed to be having those doors closed with your lights on. Closed, locked up, and prepared to fight in case somebody comes to that door. Supposed to harbor yourself inside that dwelling to be safe. Because that's what that dwelling is for your safety. From all the criminals and crooks. Not as a comfort zone where you can live peacefully in your own temple. No, we can't do it. It's got to be a safe harbor from a protection from all the criminals. So you got to lock the doors and leave the lights on and have security cameras and all this. Have your neighborhood watch program watching out for you. Where the fuck is that? I ain't seen that around since the 70s. Oh, well, we've got Big Brother keeping an eye on us now. That keeps us safe. Really? When the fuck are you people going to wake up?
Because they now have access to you and they can confirm you are okay. But if the cops force their way in anyway, don't resist. Physically resisting is the #1 thing most police officers are looking for to justify now claiming you are a threat to their officer's safety. So instead, you tell the officer very clearly, I do not consent to a search of my home or my person, and I will not answer any further questions unless my lawyer is present. Case versus Montana may.
I'm not going to answer any more questions until you acknowledge that we're in the presence of this omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, quote, God that you worship.
Be the Fourth Amendment case you didn't hear anything about. Case versus Montana didn't announce that the Fourth Amendment was dead. It did something much more deceptive than that. It changed the language under the Fourth Amendment so that cops can.
The fallen slaves us all. Why do you keep saying, when are you people going to wake up? Because I'm hoping I'm hoping you people are sharing this to people that need to hear it. If you think I'm going to sit here and sing to the choir, you're wrong. Maybe that's what you haven't gotten about the message so far. You keep taking things personal as if though I'm speaking directly to you when I believe you're one of the ones that's actually doing something about it, right? Quit taking it so personal. I do these videos to reach people that need to hear it.
Now use a different standard based on their belief of an emergency to go around the Fourth Amendment. And
so I'm asking you people to share this. Like I said, hit those buttons, the like, share, and subscribe. Hit those buttons, share this out so other people see it. Those are the ones that need to hear it. If you're here repetitively as one of my subscribers, I appreciate it. I really do. But I need you to hit those buttons and share it out. I need you to share this information out to people that need to hear it.
Find their way into your home. A judge's signature on a warrant supported by probable cause is fundamental to our constitutional rights and is in the plain language of the Fourth Amendment to our United States Constitution. But now, in so-called "we're just here to help" calls, cops can make their way into your house and then judges can say,
yeah, we're just here to help. No, you're not. You're not here to help a motherfucking thing except your paycheck. Understand that, folks.
Yeah, that seemed reasonable later. And the final shocking thing I want to mention on this video is that the decision was 9-0.
9-0. They decided 9-0 to get rid of the Fourth Amendment prerequisites. Again, because it's an Article 1 court. And they believe you're part of the administration as those bitch-ass slaves. And they can prove it because when you go to court, you're going to show them that fucking ID. You're going to pull that goddamn thing right out of your pocket and show it to them.
And it was unanimous, which means what? It sends a clear signal to all the lower courts to open the floodgates. If cops claim there's an emergency, they can enter and seek forgiveness later. So I have to ask you,
are you doing this in the presence of that almighty God that you pray and worship to? Or are you trying to do this in the dark shadows you've been trained evil with?
Home isn't your castle.
Because I ain't afraid of your fucking shadows. I ain't afraid of fucking one. Not one. I enjoy darkness. I'm used to it.
In the most sacred and private place of all, what is? Speaking of your home being your castle, what if you look to open the door to show the cops you're okay and they shove their foot in your door? Check out this next video where I break down how you can stop cops.
Yeah, so go check him out. Hampton Law. Hampton Law. Go check him out. Okay, now the grit and grime of what I'm getting to here. This is Philip Zimbardo. as you remember, Philip Zimbardo is the one that did the Stanford Prison Project. Turned out terribly. And he came to realize that there was something better he could do in his line of work. So he came up with what's called the Heroic Imagination Project. So I've got 2 videos from him. First one's a TED Talk. We're going to listen to him on a TED Talk on the nature of evil and the making of heroes. Both of them are TED Talks, actually.
So I'm here to tell you about my journey from evil to heroism. And it's an interesting journey. Oh, shoot. I think we're missing some of my slides. Oh, anyway, I grew up in poverty in New York City ghetto. And as Bill Strickland said yesterday to all of us, if you grow up in a ghetto, you grow up without nature. You grow up in an ugly place. And the problem is, how do you keep that ugliness from getting inside of you? I also had friends who were good kids who did bad things. And I always wondered, what went wrong? Why did they go bad? And so the question I asked as a kid, is the line between good and evil impermeable, as my parents had led me to believe, that good people like us were on this side and bad people like them were on the other side? Or was it permeable, that good kids could be corrupted, seduced, at the same time bad kids could be recovered? And so that has guided my thinking.
No, I did not.
And now that I'm a psychologist, I'm interested in evil. I'm interested in understanding evil. I'm interested in creating evil, so I understand how and why. And there are really 3 kinds of evil. One kind of evil is dispositional. This is in people. What do people
I just have a lot of passion.
And we call
in
these
me.
bad apples. Anders Breivik is a young, handsome Norwegian guy who shot to death 69 kids, thinking he was a martyr for trying to prevent Norway from becoming a Muslim enclave. Then there's situational evil, which is the main thing I'm going to talk about. Situational evil is the barrel, the bad barrel that you put good apples in and they get corrupted. This was the case we'll talk about in a moment with Abu Ghraib. So this is the social and physical environment.
And this is honestly what I believe with the police departments and stuff, folks. We're putting good apples in barrels that are full of rotten apples. I honestly believe that a lot of these people that want to be police officers want to be those heroes. They go in thinking they're going to be a hero and they're going to do a good job and they're going to be a good officer. But once you put them in that barrel, it's like a bucket of crabs. Everybody's climbing to get to the top, and they're going to end up falling to the bottom and become rotten themselves. I honestly think that's what happens. Good people are corrupted by the older people in there, trained in evil, and then taking them under their wing and showing them how this works in the mean streets.
In which you put people in, and it's that setting, the things all around us that are corruptible. The third part of evil is the more powerful one. It's the one we ignore. It's what we call systemic evil. It's the bad barrel makers. This is where power is. This is cultural, historical, legal, economic. And that produces the big evil, although it's very effectively, typically disguised. So evil, my definition is, evil is about power and it's about the abuse of power. To intentionally harm people through prejudice, through gossip, through discrimination, to hurt people physically, through torture, through rape, to kill mortally. But again, big evil is done by governments in wars. And this is to commit crimes against humanity. Stanley Milgram, little Jewish kid in the Bronx, asked the question, could the Holocaust occur again in America? Because he wanted to know.
The Milgram experiment.
Could he be put in a concentration camp? Yes. Would you electrocute a stranger if somebody like Hitler asked you to? We were high school classmates in the Bronx, and we were both what we call situationists. We believed that if the situation were changed, the things we saw around us, the father wasn't working, his kid's sister was a prostitute, things would be different. If you grow up privileged, you want to believe that goodness is in your genes and that you don't want things to change because you want to maintain that privilege. So he did a very famous study, which I will encapsulate for you very briefly. He did it in New Haven, Connecticut. He was a Yale professor, and he also replicated in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And it's a study about memory. So he invites people to come to his laboratory, 2 at a time, and one of you is going to be the learner, one of you is going to be the teacher. And the learner the teacher gives the learner material to learn. When he gets it right, you say fine. When he gets it wrong, you have to punish him by giving an electric shock. And so here's the teacher, and here's the experiment in the lab coat. And when he gets it wrong, you press a button. The first button is 15 volts. When you press it, there's no response. The guy you're teaching is in another room. And as you increase from 15 to 30 to 45, each increment is only 15 volts. So it's really very small, steadily, slippery slope down. But now when it gets in the hundreds, the guy starts screaming and yelling, and you're a good person. You heard the experiment, say, sir, I don't want to continue. He said, I'm sorry, you have a contract. You must go on. And the study now is about not knowing how to.
I'm sorry, you have a contract. You must go on. So think about that stuff in this real society. You have a contract, and that's what they're doing. You must go on. You've got a contract. Okay, that's that state ID. It's a contract with the state. You must go on. End the contract. Give it up. Quit being so fucking dependent upon the state, the false patriarch. Special case says, thanks for sharing the knowledge, for I will share on X platform to those who are open-minded about learning their use of rights and above the Constitution, the common universal law, God the Father. Appreciate it, sister. Appreciate it.
Exit. Because now the guy is really screaming, and the experiment says it doesn't matter. He's got a contract too. You must continue. The problem now is, at the end of this shock box is 450 volts. When it gets to 375, the guy screams, there's a thud and silence. He's either unconscious or he's dead, in which case you can't help him improve his memory anymore, so probably everybody should quit. So the question is, who would go up to 450 volts? Milgram described the study to 40 psychiatrists in New Haven, and they said 1%. That's sadistic behavior, only sadists would do that. Well, it turns out they were wrong. Maybe it was more, maybe it was 2%, maybe it was 5%, maybe it was 10%, maybe it was a third, maybe it was half. In fact, in that research, and in many, many replications, it turns out 2/3 of all ordinary people, and Milgram tested 1,000 men, the ages 20 to 50, and it included one group of women, 2/3 go all the way in that situation. So yes, and
2/3 of the people will go all the way, knowing it's harming somebody else, knowing that they're the one causing that harm. They will go all the way. They will kill you. Imagine that. That's the Milgram experiment.
indeed, if Hitler asked you to electrocute a stranger, he could get the majority of people in virtually any audience to do so. My message is, all evil begins with 15 volts.
Notice he spoke about Hitler there. That's because his Milgram friend was a Jewish child and went through the concentration camps. So I mentioned Hitler's willing executioners because that's what I see. I see the same thing. I've been seeing it for a long time. And it's disheartening. It's a shame. I feel guilty myself. That's why I do this.
Well, evil begins the Friday night when you're going home and somebody says, hey, the numbers are not adding up. Would you warm up the books? That's a prelude to cooking the books. Well, evil begins with a little gossip, a little putting somebody down, a little laughing at somebody's racist, sexist joke. Because once you do that, you're on that slippery slope down. My sense is that it's very rare that somebody will tell you to do a bad thing. We grow up in institutions, in families, in schools. We grow up in teams, businesses. So what happens when institutions have that we are enmeshed in an institution? Now you have roles, there are rules, there are group pressures, there are leaders. There's a whole set of complex factors that impact your behavior. So I did a study at Stanford University 40 years ago. We put an ad in the Palo Alto newspaper. We got 75 volunteers, and we gave them a battery of personality tests and interviews because we wanted 24 who were the most normal and most healthy. Okay? Good apples. We flip a coin, half are guards, half are prisoners, and then we assign half to be guards and half to be prisoners. The prisoners are put in these degrading little outfits. We take away the names, they become numbers. They are de-individuated. The guards are put in, have handsome uniforms and symbols of power, silver reflecting sunglasses, an idea I got from the movie Cool Hand Luke, to promote the de-humanization in contact between prisoners and guards. And it begins with jumping jacks, menial thing, push-ups, but it always goes down that slippery slope to more and more humiliating, degrading activities, cleaning toilet bowls out with their bare hands, stripping them naked, using every occasion to humiliate them more and more. Within 36 hours, a student we chose because he was normal and healthy had an emotional breakdown. Okay? We had to release him, of course. We replaced him with somebody else. And the next day, another prisoner broke down. So he became a model of how you get out of the prison because it was a prison run by psychologists. It was an amazing Kafka-Pirandello-esque transformation. It was a prison run by psychologists, no longer an experiment, not only in the minds of the prisoners, but also me and my staff, 2 graduate students and undergraduate. We had to end the study, which was supposed to go for 2 weeks, after 36 hours, because 5 students, chosen because they were normal, healthy, on all personality tests and all of our interviews, had emotional breakdowns.
That's in 36 hours, folks. That's in 36 hours. Imagine what you're doing to your children when you discipline them. It's an emotional aspect. And it carries on through life. It's disturbing, but truthful. This is why society is the way it is today. This is why this welfare, care, and concern about the community is all bullshit. Because nobody really cares about anybody. When are you going to start caring?
It had spun out of control. All experiments are artificial, so you always want to know, what are the real-world parallels? So this is a picture of our guards taking prisoners to parole board, headed by an ex-convict with secretaries and, very realistic, with the bags over the heads, legs chained. And there's Abu Ghraib, bigger bags, bigger guns. I became an expert witness for one of the guards in Abu Ghraib because when the Bush administration and when the military general said, this is the work of a few bad apples, I said, you know, I don't believe that. I believe American soldiers are good, and somebody put them in a bad barrel, just like I did at the Stanford prison study, because the visual parallels were dramatic. In fact,
and that's exactly what I'm saying about the police. I see the visual comparison is the same. Read Hitler's Willing Executioners, and you will see how we have the police state today. It is putting apples in a barrel full of rotten apples. We've got great men and women that want to be heroes when they enter that police force. But once they enter, they become corrupted. They take on that stench, that foul stench. Well, I'm just doing my job. How many times are you going to listen to people tell you, I'm just doing my job, and not hear the resounding ring of a Hitler's willing executioner? I urge you, read Jonah Gold. What is it? Let me get it here. Daniel Jonah Goldhagen. Look it up. Hitler's Willing Executioners by Daniel Jonah Goldhagen.
As an expert witness, I got to understand him. I got access to all the 1,000 of those ugly pictures, of which we saw a dozen. And I got access to all the reports. And there was no question, Abu Ghraib was a Stanford prison study on steroids. It was a corrupting situation created by the military that not only Chip Frederick, the guy I defended, but all the other soldiers on the night shift were subjected to. Of course, he's guilty. You're accountable for your behavior. But when 9 of 9 people on the night shift did similarly bad things, and they were not real soldiers, they were military, police, army, reserve, and no one on the day shift did anything bad, say, what is the difference? On the night shift, the military intelligence tells military police, we want you guys to take the gloves off. We want you to do whatever you have to do, so when we interrogate them, they're going to spill the beans. And then in 3 months, not a senior officer goes down to the dungeon to see what they're doing. The day shift is always surveillance. So here's a situational difference which produces the horrific behavior we saw of American men and women, not only abusing prisons, but smiling, giving high fives.
Smiling and giving high fives. Smiling and giving high fives. We saw a video here recently where they decided that they were going to use the flip of a coin to determine whether they're going to arrest a woman or not. And then giggling about it. This is the mentality of their care and concern. They don't give one fuck.
So why do ordinary people turn evil? We have a recipe. We know in a very short time that we put you in a new situation, especially one where we can manipulate whether you have a lot of power or none. And here's 10 variables that can get the majority of people in any situation to do almost anything that we would all agree is evil. But now we want to flip the table. We want to know what's involved in getting people to become heroic. And there's a whole list of possibilities, including mindfulness, compassion, empathy.
What stream? What stream got ended? Okay, so yeah, they stopped the one on Hecklebus. So, as you can see, folks, just going over this material and the language that I use, it's not a copyright strike, but it's the topic of statist police. There we go. See? And they brought it back. That was quick, huh? That was quick. They stopped the one on Hecklebus. Now it's back up. So you should be able to go back to Hecklebus if you were over there. The views on both are fine. Let's get back to it.
You don't have a clue. There's almost no research on heroism. It's an incredible phenomenon. The word does not exist in psychology texts. It doesn't exist in positive psychology's human strengths and virtues. Because
see, and that's another thing that I love how he pointed out was that there's no research on heroism. It's all about the degradation and evil and degeneracy. They don't do any research on those that have these extra abilities, seemingly, of care and concern and do good things. They don't do research on that. They don't do research on how to be good. They do the research on how to be bad.
Heroism is an action, it's not a virtue, according to them. I recently had a dialogue with the Dalai Lama at Stanford, and I said, is compassion enough in a world filled with evil? Doesn't compassion have to be socially engaged? Doesn't compassion have to lead to heroic action? And he reluctantly agreed because he still thinks, once everybody in the world is compassionate, evil will cease to exist, but that, for me, is a fantasy. And so while waiting for that, we want to create heroes. So heroism is a behavior that is voluntarily.
Yeah, evil will always exist. It's a contradicting balance that allows us to know what is good. So evil will never dissipate. It'll never disappear. It'll always be there.
It's coming to the aid of others in need, or in defense of a moral principle or an ethical cause, and involves a risk to have life and limb, a risk to your career, and that's altruism is heroism light, no real risk. And you can't do it expecting reward. You can get a reward afterwards, but that can't be the motivation. The other thing is, we believe heroism is coachable, trainable, modeled, and not inborn. So what does it take to be a hero? We used to think that heroes were special people. This really comes from Joseph Campbell and others, for whom heroes were male warriors, Achilles, Agamemnon, Odysseus. But it turns out, no. Most heroes are ordinary people. It's the act of heroism that transcends them into something special and ordinary, not ordinary. So one of the people on my team interviewed President Obama to say, what does it take to be a hero? Do you have to be a special person? And here's the really eloquent, concise statement that Obama makes.
What's remarkable about history is ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. No, it's ordinary people doing ordinary things. The thing is that we don't have ordinary people anymore. We've got a bunch of bitch-ass slaves, cuck cowards hiding in corners and locking their doors.
Last year, Rosa Parks passed away. I remember sitting on this stage with world leaders, senators and governors, and thinking we were all paying homage to a seamstress who had transformed the country and helped transform the world. We never know sort of how our actions are going to ripple over time, but each of us can take some responsibility for making sure that we are pushing a little bit in the direction of justice. And
we don't know how our actions can ripple over time. The bullshit that these people spew. We know exactly how our actions ripple over time. The little Albert experiment shows it all. That's why they outlawed such experiments. Yet we have all kinds of those experiments still going on in the classrooms today. Where do you think the bullying concept is rippling from?
The direction of equality and the direction of tolerance. And when we do that, we may surprise ourselves with the amount of influence that, in fact, we have just by standing up or speaking up.
Standing up, speaking out, and be aware that we have a powerful.
Standing up and speaking out. That's all you got to do. Stand up and speak out. They play tricks on me all the time while I'm trying to listen to content. Interference seems to correlate usually to some hot button topic. Yeah, this is a hot button topic when I'm up here talking about Hitler's willing executioners and suicide and how the police are asserting false authorities and how the people are bitch-ass slaves paying tribute to a false patriarch, claiming they're Christians. Come on. Who thinks this is going to be pushing buttons? The only buttons it's pushing is the algorithm. That's why I need you people to push that share button and share it out to people that need to hear this. Because the algorithm's not going to do it.
Influence. When you do something positive, without your awareness, people notice, and you become a model for good things. When you do something bad, you become a model for the negative. So here's Rosa Parks, First Lady of Civil Rights. Here's Rosa Parks as a prisoner. Because she refused to give up her seat, she is 7053, sent to jail in 1955. And people said, did you not get up because you were tired? She said, no. The only tired I was tired of giving in to racism, giving in to the system. Here's the guy who stopped Abu Ghraib, Joe Darby, the most ordinary guy in the world, a low-level private. He did the right thing. He took the CD that his friends showed him with these hundreds of pictures, and he brought it to the senior investigating officer and said, sir, you have to stop this. He did it knowing he was going to get in trouble because his buddies were all going to get dishonorably discharged. Here's a little kid. Heroes come in all sizes.
He knew it. He knew it was going to get him into trouble. It was going to get him into trouble with his fellow officers, not with the law. It was going to get him into trouble with those that wanted to foment the evil, and he wasn't going to let him get away with it. That's who it was going to get him in trouble with. You have to be willing to validate yourself with the truth and reality of righteousness and being just in your actions. If you're not willing to do that, you're one of those apples that's going to end up in a barrel.
9-year-old Lin Hao, there was an earthquake just before the Olympics, and the school collapsed. He survived. He's running out, and he notices two of his buddies trying to escape. He runs over, helps them get out. People said, "Why did you risk your life?" He said, "Why? I was the hall monitor. It was my job to look after my classmates." So this is what I call putting the heroic imagination into action, and it's what we are proposing. And Cuba.
It was my job. When we instill the simple idea that it's your job to look out for your neighbor, to love thy neighbor as thyself, when we start instilling that in the hearts of our children again, that's when we'll see those kind of heroes again, folks. It ain't going to happen without you.
We have the communal heroes in Cuba that we all saw. Some of this stimulated by Václav Havel's dramatic heroism in the Czech Republic. Libya's political unrest was produced by a single lawyer. And we know now in Japan, 50 engineers are sacrificing their life to stay on duty all this time to try to stop the nuclear meltdown. The question is, what can you do? When one person stops to help in an emergency, many others join in. When there's the bystander effect is, when there's a number of people, the more people are less like anybody's to help. But when the first person helps, immediately there's a crowd. So what do? Be that person. That's the power of one. Be that.
This is Philip Zimbardo. Dr. D had asked El Perro, what's that guy's name? This is Philip Zimbardo. He's the one that did the Stanford Prison Project. He was the Stanford Professor Emeritus. And I think he's got an excellent character, excellent concept. And the next video we're going to watch of him at another TED Talk, he's going to be talking about those heroes, instilling that hero mentality into the children, like that crossing guard.
First person, because when you do, suddenly everybody, all the other citizens join you. They're to be different. Because what that means is, in any situation, the group says, don't get involved, mind your own business. You cannot be a hero unless you're willing to be different from the others. Flex your moral courage. Act wisely, well, and often. Practice being a hero.
Flex your moral courage. See, that's what it takes today, is moral courage. You have to stand up with courage in order to express morals today, because they're not inherent. They're not embedded in us. They're discouraged. They're mocked. Oh, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. Things like that. Act wisely, well, and often. Be an ally to those in need.
Be an ally. Be an ally. We talk to high school kids tomorrow. Be an ally to gay, lesbian, shy kids. Those are the ones who are going to get bullied the most. Stand up for them. Simply, that's the power of two. Start with small steps, everyday deeds. Focus on others. Give a compliment a day. Ask questions. Don't blindly obey.
Give a compliment a day, he says. Give someone a compliment. Make them feel special. Focus on others. This is embedded in me from Boy Scouts. The very motto, to do a good turn daily.
Courageous conversations before the situation gets out of control. And discover, what is your ripple effect? What action or inaction? Whether you act or don't, it doesn't really matter, because you have a ripple effect, again, positive or negative. So Superman's father is telling Superman, flying around all day just won't cut it. Sooner or later, you have to take some action. And my Heroic Imagination Project is providing the toolkits so that they can be wise and effective heroes. So the heroic imagination is learning to be courageous. Imagination is teaching people to imagine themselves acting heroically in everyday situations. And heroic imagination is a mindset that enhances people's effectiveness as becoming social change agents.
Social change agents. Your mindset. That's, again, why I do this, the social change. Because I see socially, we are becoming a police state more and more. And it's 10 times worse today than it was when I was a child. And that's just a few decades. Imagine in a few decades when your grandchildren are coming up, how much worse it's going to be if you don't start it today, becoming that courageous social outlier.
So the 4 domains of my Heroic Imagination Project are education. We have programs in high school, middle school, and now college. We want to have these in summer camps and clubs and online, and ultimately mobile apps. We are doing research, and we want to get funding so we can sponsor research for graduate students everywhere. We have a wonderful.
So it's much like trying to instill those moral ethics that we get from the Christian scriptures that they took out of school by placing them back into school.
A corporate program creating cultures of integrity, heroic leadership, and internal whistleblowing. And we'd love
creating cultures of integrity, heroic leadership, internal whistleblowing. Isn't that what Jesus was talking about? Think about it, all you Christians.
Up to do our magic in your company. We just finished a pilot at Google. And lastly, we want to have a public engagement website where we can send our message around the world with interactive exercises. So the world needs more heroes. What the world really needs is you. Because Yoda tells us, do or do not. There is no try. And heroes don't try, they just do. Thank you very much.
Heroes don't try, they just do. Heroes don't try, they just do. Now here's another TED Talk from him. Creating a new, the previous one was from 13 years ago. I'm pretty sure, yeah, 13 years ago. And this one is another TED Talk from 8 years ago. Creating a new generation of youth superheroes. Philip Zimbardo. I like his shirt there, how he's got the Z like the Superman, showing his character in this aspect of creating heroes. Absolutely phenomenal. And I think that's what we're supposed to be doing naturally in our own children these modern days.
I want to begin by bringing greetings from my students in San Francisco, California, USA, to the many students here at TEDx Roma. I hope you are having fun, intellectual fun. I'm excited to share my ideas today, in 3 areas. My fears and pessimism about the rise of right-wing totalitarian governments that threaten democracy in the United States, as well.
I don't know what's going on there. It seems fine from this side. The fallen slaves, this all says again, what happened to the El Perro stream before they stopped the Heckle stream and started it right back up less than a minute later. This one here, it seems to be running. I checked it. It's running fine.
As in all of Europe. I want to end in a positive note by focusing on my optimism that a new generation of youth super.
And if you're on a device rather than a laptop and you're watching that vertical on a device or something, it might just be the vertical that's going out. I don't know. But the full landscape view videos on El Perro and Heckle are both running at this time.
Heroes will be our salvation. And in between, I'm going to talk about how I am applying social psychology lessons in high schools around the world to create everyday heroes. About 2008, I gave my first.
And I think that's an important thing in the high school curriculum. I think it's important that our younger children be taught about psychology. It's actually kind of basic and simple. And if we taught them the psychology, the simplistics of it anyway, instead of the higher college degrees on it, but the simplistics of psychology, I think they would be much better prepared for their adult life, much better prepared to be able to see people for who they are when they communicate with them, whether they're seeking validation or trying to virtue signal or project or deflect and things like that. I think it's an important aspect that we need to instill into any kind of educational curriculum, whether it be private schools, public schools, or homeschooling. I think it's important to teach our children the mentality that we see in the world and what it's doing. I think it's important to teach them how you can throw a good apple into a barrel and it rots because of its company.
Many talks at the big TED stage in America. As you can see, I'm wearing the Lucifer t-shirt, and the psychology of evil was my main focus. Of course, I talked primarily about the Stanford prison experiment that I did many, many years ago, 1970.
I've been told that.
And in that experiment, as you know, We recruited normal, healthy, intelligent college students from all over America to be in our study, which was supposed to go for 2 weeks. I had to end it after only 6 days because boys who were...
And see, the thing about psychology, you know, special cases, failed psychology twice in college. I'm more into the subject now than ever. And see, psychology in the subjective plane, independently, each one of us, it's like a learning curve. And that learning curve in college, they try to mash it down into a short wave. Whereas the learning curve of life is your entire life. So it's a matter of being able to take the psychology simplistics and manage them throughout your life. And by the time you're done and you're an old grandpa and you're teaching your grandchildren, they're going to get a better learning foundation than somebody that's got it all squished into 4 years of college. Yes, we can all relate and resonate to it by experience. That's the experience that I keep talking about. Firsthand actions speak louder than words. You could never have enough experience by going to a classroom and reading shit out of books. You're going to get a much better learning curve by observing your natural world around you and seeing it for what it is.
Recruited randomly to be prison guards were behaving sadistically and cruelly, so much so that boys who were normal and healthy as playing the role of prisoners had emotional breakdowns. This study has become a classic in the power of situational forces to dominate individual personality. That study was a part of a bigger theme of mine of the psychology of evil around the world. It was replicated in 2004, not in an experiment, not in a university, but in Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq, where American soldiers did the same thing to Iraqi prisoners they were supposed to be protecting. They were degrading, humiliating, and torturing them, not for 6 days, but for 3 months. And this was...
So imagine taking that emotional stress from 3 days of a full-grown, healthy man that broke down emotionally in 3 days, and now extend it to 3 months. How devastating is that to one's character, to their personality? Imagine.
Horrific, a horrific thing to experience. The third thing I want to mention is my little experiment has been made into a very interesting, powerful Hollywood movie called The Stanford Prison Experiment, which I think we'll be showing here soon.
The Fallen Slaves, this all says plus in regards to the college education on psychology and other things. Says plus they fail you if you don't see it the way they want you to. Correct. It's a indoctrination system to see things the way they present it. There is no room for change. They think that they've been around long enough already, that everything is already known, and that the way they present it is the way it is. No, it's not. Again, psychology is not something that is objective. Okay? It's like the earlier video. There is no objectively reasonable belief. Belief is subjective, not objective.
The last thing that I mentioned in that talk at TED was a provocative question to the audience that I give to you today. We know how easy it is for good people to become evil. The question is, can ordinary people be inspired and trained to be everyday heroes? I'm here today to say the answer is yes, and I'm doing this by creating the Heroic Imagination Project.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay, and what he's talking about here is what we see on YouTube and these social media content platforms. We see a lot of these modern heroes, the people that are going around and helping the homeless by purchasing things for them and stuff like that. It's a great thing. And I think we need to instill it more and more. That's that reaching out to love thy neighbor as thyself. And so when you see somebody that doesn't have something you have, and you can afford to give it to them, it's excess. It's that water that flows over, that welling over of the cup. That's what we're meant to do.
So in San Francisco, we created a nonprofit called Heroic Imagination Project because heroism starts in the imagination. Imagine you could be a hero. And we'll talk about what does it mean to be this new kind of hero. So we teach social psychology lessons in high school and middle school and now in corporations to teach people how to stand up, how to speak out, and how to take wise and effective action against all forms of evil. The evil I'm concerned at is, for 40 years, all over Europe, you had to deal with fascism and communism. But now the new threat is right-wing totalitarian governments that are flourishing in Eastern and Western European nations. For the first time, I think America is moving in that same direction with our new president. Exclusionary thinking is growing worldwide. For example, Hungarian political leaders say migrants are poison and are not needed. What they do is they control the media, and by dehumanizing others with negative media images, ordinary citizens, ordinary people begin to accept discrimination against minorities. Our President Donald Trump said, we must ban all Muslims from entering the United States. We must have a complete shutdown of all immigrants entering America. The problem is all Americans are immigrants, except...
You don't say.
The only ones that are not immigrants were Native Americans, and sadly, many of them live in poverty on reservations. So totalitarian dangers to democracy, they come gradually, but systematically I want to illustrate. So many know the famous studies by Stanley Milgram in the 1960s on blind obedience to authority. This is a picture of Stanley Milgram, and incidentally, he and I were high school classmates in 1950 in the Bronx. But this is his famous shock box. In his study, if you remember, he recruited people to be teachers who were going to teach their learner how to improve his performance or her performance. And every time the learner made a mistake, they had to give him electric shock. And they began with only 15 volts, but then they increased it by 15 volts with every mistake on a shock box that had 30 switches. And when they get to 100, 150, the learner begins to yell and scream. And in every case, the teachers turn to the experimenter in a white lab coat, he's the authority, say, I don't want to continue. I'm sorry, you have a contract, you must go on. So they complained, verbally, but they did not, but they behaviorally complied. And at the end of the box was 450 volts, triple X. The question is, who would go all the way? The sad answer is 2 of every 3 of almost 1,000 participants went to the full extreme. But I want to say to you, for me, the important message is all evil begins with 15 volts. When you press that
15 volts. What he's talking about here is that experiment went from 15 volts to 450 volts. But in reality, it's the little slight. It's the insult. It's the mocking. You know, even as a child, just mocking another child that doesn't fit in with the little cliche that you're in. You know, and as you get older and get bolder, they get bigger and worse and more defined. They become physical. They go beyond the mental realm, and now they become physical. That's what he's talking about.
First button, you're on the steady, slippery slope to evil, because you see where it could be. So I want to now show a totalitarian shock box that I created along with my colleague in Budapest, Adam Molnar. And I want to show you how totalitarian governments start with that 15 volts, and they increase gradually, one by one by one, until finally there's total domination.
One by one until finally there's total domination. And that goes in retrospect to that comment about the colleges again. Special K brings it up. And to think that you are being taught a subject that has many different theories by famous psychologist Servitude, to focus and only believe in the one they choose is full indoctrination. It's for that authoritative control, so that when you get that license and that certificate and post it on the wall, people will believe in that rather than in your behaviors. Dr. D goes on to say rubber stamp academics operate primarily off of mimetic memory acquiescence to the status quo, rather than continued contemplation of ontology and passion for eclectic understanding. Absolutely. I think it's imperative that people understand that we've come to a world where we have been indoctrinated into believing what the predecessors have said and not to question it, not to go outside of the box, not to push the boundaries, and to stick with the status quo. Otherwise, we might get harmed. We might be hurt. We might suffer detriment. That's that institution of fear that we've been brought up in. Instead of being brought up in this world of honor and integrity, we're being brought up in this world of fear and guilt for being devious people. And I don't think we are. I think every child is born with a good heart. And it's only when they're thrown in a barrel with a bunch of others that don't have a good heart and that they become corrupt. That barrel, most obvious, is the public education system. Just saying.
So 15 volts, limited free speech, control the media, control the judiciary, replace politicians with elected officials, punish, imprison all critics, suspend all elections, the military or religious rule, and then finally, 450 volts is total political domination. So this is how a right-wing government, at the beginning you say, this is not for me, we're not that kind of people, gradually over time, one by one, day by day, month by month, has this effect. I should mention, for example, last week in Budapest, the Hungarian government has taken over Central European University. It's a private university. It's never happened before. And in fact, what they're doing is saying it must change the name to Hungarian Central University and get rid of all of the foreign professors. I want to mention 4 challenges that I see. The first is the expanding inequality.
And so, people, we do have that problem again. Says, dang, it went out again on El Perro. So I urge you people to understand what's going on. They're trying to silence what we're putting out as truth. Don't care who it is or why. This is why I do this. Well, it shows I've still got 2 viewers. So I'm going to check on my phone, see what's going on the phone. Because this is quite ridiculous. Yeah, on my vertical, it's still live. Yeah, on my vertical, it's still live. You hear that? You hear that? So we're going to continue on.
Gap between the very few rich, typically 1%, and the many poor people around the world. In America and many other countries, the middle class is being squeezed out, and in fact, being eliminated. Secondly, the ever-increasing flow of migrants. We shouldn't call them migrants, we should call them people migrating from countries, from war-torn, impoverished countries to neighboring countries. The estimation will be maybe 6 million people by next year. The other big problem is every society is graying, aging. As people live longer and lifespans increase, and also in many countries, the fertility rate is declining. In Japan, they have a negative fertility rate. This is a new problem for the young people. And lastly, around the world, there's mass migration from the south to the north, from the east to the west, and from farms to cities. And each of these are creating what we call porous border challenges. How can you begin to inspire heroism is my new mission in life. What I'm going to show you is a cartoon made by a Polish student. And in it, it describes what is the Heroic Imagination Project. Then it introduces one of our 6 lessons. Me and my team have transformed social psychology knowledge into 6 in-depth lessons with videos, provocative challenges to students. This lesson you're going to see is the bystander effect. How do you transform passive bystanders into active heroes? How do you transform people who have a static, fixed mindset into a dynamic growth mindset? How do you transform prejudice and discrimination into understanding and acceptance? And other programs about conformity, about social attribution. Hello, I'm Phil Zimbardo, president and founder of the Heroic Imagination Project. Our main focus is promoting the idea that heroes are ordinary people who take extraordinary action in challenging situations in their lives. Effective heroes do the right thing when other people are doing the wrong thing, or more often when they're doing nothing, and also to expose evil in all of its many forms as a whistleblower. We believe heroism begins in the mind, begins with thinking about yourself as a hero, thinking about yourself as having an inner hero that we will help express through our lessons, our ways of rethinking the nature of good and evil. Transforming bystander apathy into heroic action. Bystander apathy is what characterizes what's known as the
bystander apathy. Absolutely. When you're a bystander, you see this shit happen and don't do anything about it. That's the old adage that evil shit happens because good men stand by and don't do anything about it.
bystander effect. In emergency situations, the more people present, paradoxically, the less likely anyone's to help. That's called the bystander effect. It was generated many years ago by the brutal murder in New York City of the woman Kitty Genovese, where many people heard her screams and did nothing. As soon as one person helps, then in seconds, that help is expanded. Our message is be the one. Be that person who ignores the social norm of doing nothing and creates a new social norm of doing something. So we want to inspire heroism.
A new social norm of doing something. It should be a norm for a long time. Again, in a Christian society that has that scripture that says, do unto thyself, or do unto thy, love thy neighbor as thyself, that should be the imperative. It should already be normal. What happened to it?
So very quickly, what is a hero? A hero is somebody who acts on behalf of others in need or defends a moral cause. What makes it heroism and not altruism, you're aware that's a personal risk or cost. Heroes are ordinary people, everyday people. They always disown the label. When you say somebody did a heroic deed, they say, no, I did what anyone could.
And the only possible thing I can think of right now as to why they would shut the streams down, because the landscape ones, the horizontal ones, the stream is unavailable. This video is unavailable. And the only thing I can think that they would strike them for would be a copyright, but TED Talks are specific. And so I brought up the outlier under at the bottom. You'll see it scrolling across the screen, and it reads that see Hosen-Zada versus Klein, fair use for commentary and education. We are not a monetized channel. It's private foundation. We are doing this for education and not monetization.
Do. And heroes have a ripple effect. When you see someone doing something good, it has a big impact on others. When you see somebody doing something bad, it has a negative ripple effect. So in our training, we are very practical. We say, start with small steps to become an everyday hero in training. So make somebody feel special today. Learn their name, look them in the eye, shake their hand, give a justifiable compliment. Again, ask questions, never follow the rules blindly. We teach our children to obey authority, but obey just authority and defy unjust authority. And always ask, what is my ripple effect? What have I done today that will influence other people? And the critical thing is, heroes are sociocentric. The enemy of heroism is egocentrism. When you think about me, I'm never focused on you. My job in life is every day, in every place I go, to make other people feel special, and it's never about me. So the question is, how do we change our perspective away from me to we, away from us to them? And with that, I want to mention very quickly that our hero project is in Corleone, the Godfather town in Sicily, as well as in 9 other countries. And of course, the Godfather town, the mafia still is much too important, not only in Italy, but around the world. There's Russian mafia, Chinese mafia, and we must break that evil because they control corporations and businesses in corrupt ways. And our program has just started in Palermo, where these young boys came from, and in the Borgo Vecchio, in the ghetto of Palermo. And most interestingly, as you can see in this picture, some of our students have just migrated from Africa, boys migrating alone. And we're teaching them the lessons of social psychology to make them everyday heroes. And so what we're hoping...
The lessons of psychology to make everyday heroes. Instilling that greatness back into the hearts that they had when they were children. Looking up to their dad and thinking he was such a great man. Looking up to her mom and thinking that she's a great woman. Instilling that greatness in people to keep pushing that, to make that the repertoire of the day.
Hoping is they will take this message back. And what a brighter future looks like to me is peace replaces war, compassion rules over fear, understanding and acceptance replaces prejudice and discrimination, and the most important thing for me is, in the future, heroes will dominate villains. With that, I want to say...
Absolutely. Absolutely. Heroes will dominate villains. Today, we have villains dominating heroes, and we need to turn that. We need to switch that all around. We need to change up. And the only way we can do that is starting with ourselves. As he said, doing that good turn daily, thinking of others before yourself. So, on the way out, oops, wrong one. On the way out, enjoy one I did a few years back. I've been planning on this and building this up for a long time. I don't know what happens here, but I got to reset this. My apologies, folks. But if you remember my Paul Jr. channel, it's still there. Paul and I recently have made somewhat of an amends, and we're on speaking terms. So this is something I developed back when I was associating with him, because I saw in him the same thing. I see a hero. I see somebody willing to stand up. But I just hope he changes it a little bit, a tweak here or there. Quit putting people down. Making game out of them. That's that little slight, that little mockery stuff that builds. Enjoy the outro. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully we'll see you again next time.